Good evening. My name is Frank Allen. This is the Targeted Massachusetts Northeast Conference. This evening we are presenting a UN questionnaire, and we will begin now.
Q&A session has started.
Okay, has your country taken any policy action or initiative relative to neurotechnology and human rights at the national level? If so, please share any relevant information. And I have put no. And my supporting documentation states that in 2022, the Neural Rights Foundation proposed the addition of 5 new human rights to address the ever-growing changes that neural rights would present. The right to cognitive liberty, the right to mental privacy, the right to mental integrity, the right to psychological continuity, and the right to identity. These rights can be summed up with one phrase: the intellectual property of an individual human being. And that's the way I have chosen to word that particular question. Question number 2. Is there any actor in the public or private sector developing this kind of technology in your country? Please provide information if possible. My answer: this technology exists in the United States in the private sector. The organization founded by Elon Musk, legally named Neuralink, incorporated in the state of California, the city of Fremont, in the year 2016. The company seeks to succeed in the interface of humans and computers, also known as BCI, or Brain-to-Computer Interface. The company has just been approved for human trials and testing in May of 2023. If you have any questions on the 2 questions that I just answered, ask them now. Otherwise, we can wait. Indicate your level of awareness, high, medium, or low, in relation to the state of development of neurotechnologies and preparedness to tackle the challenges posed by the early commercialization of these technologies. Now, this is the question where you would start to insert your targeted information, however you choose to word it. My level of awareness is very high as I am following the development of neurotechnology on a daily basis. I am very concerned that the intellectual property of every human being on the earth is in danger of being compromised should this technology fall into the wrong hands. And I have my own statement towards my targeting after that last sentence. Okay, question number 4. What human rights will be mostly impacted by the development and use of neurotechnologies? Identify the 3 rights most impacted and briefly explain why. The first one is Amendment number 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons. This right would be violated if a person's mind were to be read or compromised. Again, in Amendment number 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, and papers. Now, I take this as intellectual property. These papers have been drawn up by you. They are your property. They are in your head. And should these papers be destroyed, you could reproduce them. This right would be violated when a person's mind was searched for intellectual property. Amendment number 5. No man will be made to be a witness against himself. This right would be violated when a man in court could not plead the 5th in lieu of his mind being read. Any questions? Okay, we have a question. Okay. The person bailed. What are the biggest challenges and risks that the development, tests, and use of neurotechnologies pose to human rights? Will such risks be amplified by the development of consumer-oriented neurotechnologies? According to an article on BSR, which is an acronym for Business for Social Responsibility, neurotechnology can record or interfere with human brain activity, from physical devices like wearables and medical implants to artificial intelligence, designed to decode thought or spoken patterns. This can pose a threat to people's privacy and mental integrity. Hence, the proposal of establishing neural rights and technical principles for the implementation of these rights. In addition, according to an article on UNESCO, which is an acronym for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the effects of these technologies are still unclear, and their unregulated use entail unprecedented risks for human rights related to freedom of thought, mental integrity, and to some of its underlying preconditions, such as dignity, identity, or human agency. Lack of pertinent information in the general public may cause a deficit in cognitive function. There are no warnings written on the airwaves. Okay, we keep losing this particular person who wants to speak. If you'd like to get in the Q&A, hit it one more time, because I am going to be reading once again. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right, Frank. Thank you for inviting me to the call. That when a real person, I'm sorry, hang on. Oh God. When a real person asked as a valid question, they get knocked off the call or blocked, or not blocked, but by you, but uh, uh, it's like the internet ain't working and they cut in and out. And so that's all I wanted to say is I'm trying to validate whoever's trying to talk and they keep getting cut out. I've been there, and that's what I wanted to say right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we'll proceed. What groups are most vulnerable or at risk? Please identify 3 and explain why. And this is how I did it. You can choose, obviously, your own method. The low-income families or individuals would be at risk as they do not understand or do not care to read instructions or warnings. The upper-income families or individuals would be at risk as they could afford the wearables such as watches and the new tattoos and don't read warnings anyway. The third, all children in general would be at risk as they experiment with everything, babies in particular.
Amen.
Okay, number 7. What methods can be used to identify and assess the potential risks and impact of these technologies on human rights, in particular, the human rights of persons with disabilities and other groups in vulnerable situations? Will such risks be amplified by the development of consumer-oriented neurotechnologies?
Easy targets.
Okay, I have 3 links here that I'd love to put in the chat, but I can't really do it right now. But these are pertinent links, and they will end up in the chat for you before the night is over. One is, in fact, a book. Within each nation state, there should be an oversight committee to process the vast amounts of information available each day concerning the progress of neurotechnologies and neuroethics. HRIA can help to ensure that neurotechnologies are developed and used in a way that respects, protects, and fulfills human rights for all. There are to be many benefits as well as risks for the disabled. The disabled can now control their own video, radio, and many other household appliances with their minds. There are situations in which the disabled are taken brutally advantage of. Most of this is by study groups, offering monies in exchange for experimenting. Many times they do not get the money and they are disabled further by the experimentation. Okay, I'm going to check the queue. All right, we have another question. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, Frank, Liliana. I wasn't able to get through, but I want to just make 2 comments. On question 2, where you mentioned the private sector, like Neuralink, the public sector is also developing these technologies with experimentation from the military and also law enforcement.
Correct.
And so that should be included there, because those are the ones doing the use of guinea pigs and targeting of defenseless civilians.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I
That
go into
should be
that.
included there.
I go into that later on, actually, in other questions,
Okay.
to the point where I have to refer back to a previous question to answer that question.
Right. And then on question number 4, you mentioned 3 important rights, but let's not forget the right to mental privacy, that the Neurotechnology Foundation considered it the top right of the 5 neuro rights, that we should, that would give us our freedom and independence,
The
as human
rights
beings.
that they want us to use are the rights that are written into law and are on the books right now.
Okay.
So that would be the first through the 10th Amendment of the Constitution.
Okay. All
That's why.
Is there any of those rights related to freedom, independence, and
Yes,
privacy?
the right of the people to be secure in their persons. If you look at Old English and understand it, you will understand that means be secure within themselves as people. So, to me, anything beyond the skull, in other words, going into your head, is your property. Okay? So secure in their persons, that's what that means.
Okay. Yeah, very good. I agree.
Okay, do you have anything
Thank
more
you.
you'd like to add?
No. Those 2 comments, all the rest that I was listening to was very good and very well thought. I thank you for putting a lot of thought into this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, because it's taken years, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Okay, we have another question. Thank you, Liliana. Go ahead, CPAL. CPAL, you're unmuted. Okay, she has a lot of trouble with her mic sometime. I'm going to leave your mic open should you get it to work. Your mic will be open. From a human rights perspective, what opportunities could the use of neural technologies bring? Can these opportunities be balanced against the unidentified risks and impact? This is another area where you might put in something about targeting. Okay, improving the quality of life and well-being of people with neurological disorders or disabilities by restoring or augmenting their cognitive, sensory, or motor abilities. Enhancing the learning and performance of individuals and groups by stimulating or modulating their brain activity. Promoting social inclusion and diversity by facilitating communication and empathy across different languages, cultures, and perspectives. Advancing scientific knowledge and innovation by enabling new ways of studying and understanding the brain and its relation to behavior and society. Now, here are some of the possible... See, pal? Go ahead.
What if you have one of these first codes? You know anybody who's got a first code?
I really don't. Okay. Would you like to add anything else, CPAL? Okay, we've just gone over some of the good points that could be derived from neurotechnologies. Now, here are some of the possible risks and challenges. Interfering with the right to personal identity, free will, and mental privacy by accessing, altering, or disclosing one's thoughts, emotions, memories, or preferences without consent or awareness. Creating new forms of discrimination and exploitation by using brain data to classify, judge, or manipulate individuals or groups based on their neural characteristics or capabilities. Exacerbating existing inequalities or creating new ones by making neurotechnologies available only to certain segments of our society, or by imposing norms or standards that favor certain types of brains over others. Now, I watched a documentary some time ago where it showed a classroom full of children. Some of the children's parents had the money to buy these augmentation chips. The others did not. And that's what this is all about. Undermining the rule of law and due process by using neurotechnologies as evidence or tools in legal proceedings without adequate safeguards or regulations. That's where I conclude for that particular question. And once again, that is question number 8. Oh, I forgot my subparagraph. I'm sorry. These opportunities and risks are not mutually exclusive or exhaustive. They may depend on various factors such as the type, purpose, context, and governance of neurotechnologies. Therefore, it is important to balance them against each other and against other human rights principles and values. Some possible ways to achieve this balance are developing ethical guidelines and codes of conduct for the research, development, use, and oversight of neurotechnologies that respect human dignity, autonomy, diversity, and justice. Establishing legal frameworks and mechanisms that protect the rights and interests of individuals and groups affected by neurotechnologies, and that ensure accountability and transparency for their misuse or abuse. Promoting public awareness and engagement on the benefits and risks of neurotechnologies, and fostering a dialogue and collaboration among different stakeholders such as scientists, policymakers, practitioners, users, and civil society. Supporting education and capacity building on neurotechnologies and their ethical implications for various sectors and groups such as students, teachers, health professionals, lawyers, journalists, and policymakers. I have just read some possible ways to address the human rights issues of neurotechnologies. However, they are not definitive or comprehensive. They may require further refinement and adaptation to different contexts and situations. They may also raise new questions and challenges that need to be explored and resolved. Therefore, it is essential to keep an open mind and a critical eye on the evolving field of neurotechnologies and its impact on human rights. That concludes question 8. Okay, if there's anyone who would like to ask a question, now's the time. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Yes, Frank. Man, I was trying to listen hard because I'm all about this call. That's why I called. But my neighbors started coming all around riding their bikes and their motorcycles, and they're walking down the road, and they're making comments and throwing them my way that I could not focus on everything you said. I heard bits and pieces, and I'm sorry. I mean, I needed it. I needed it. But do you have a recording of this?
Yes, it's being recorded as we speak, Joe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, because I know this call helps people. And with my targeting, I mean, as I'm really focusing, and forget you neighbors and all you community, you backstabbers and you demonic and whoever you are. I'm trying to listen to my phone call, and they get stronger when I'm trying to listen. So, I mean, I can go to Walmart, and it's the same thing. I'm trying to buy groceries. I got my list, and they mess me up in the Walmart where I can't. I got to stay in Walmart an hour to buy 10 items. You know what I'm saying? The voices overtake my cognitiveness, and I mean, I ain't letting them. I mean, I got 25 years experience in this, but they can still do it. So that's what I was asking. Can I get a recording?
Yep.
Because I want to hear everything you said, because it was all good, and then all these people started coming around, and I lost track.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Oh, we just lost the next question. All right, I'm going to read question 9 in its entirety, and then I will ask again. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Question number 9. Is the national legal framework adequate to face the challenges that the development, testing, and use of neurotechnologies pose to human rights? Please explain briefly and indicate the relevant pieces of legislation and whether there are plans to develop any or further legislation. There are ongoing efforts at the international level to develop a common framework or standards for neurotechnologies and human rights. The International Bioethics Committee of UNESCO published a report on the ethical issues of neurotechnology in 2021, which provides a comprehensive analysis of the current state of art of neurotechnology and its implications for human rights. The report also proposes a set of recommendations for policymakers, researchers, practitioners, and civil society to ensure that neurotechnology is developed and used in a responsible and ethical manner. The Neural Rights Initiative is a global coalition of experts and stakeholders that advocates for the recognition and implementation of neural rights as a new category of human rights. The initiative also aims to establish guidelines and best practices for the development and applications of enhancement neurotechnologies based on the principle of justice and guarantee equality of access to all citizenry. The United Nations General Secretary's report, Our Common Agenda, in 2021 mentioned neurotechnology as a frontier human rights issue which makes necessary an update or clarification of the applicable human rights framework and standards with a view to preventing harms in the digital or technology spaces. ICADER from Belgium, which is an acronym for International Coalition Against Electronic Torture and Robotization of Living Beings, is making progress in establishing a framework and setting a precedent for all who follow. Targeted Justice from the nation state, the United States, is also setting a precedent in the legal system, establishing a legal framework in this nation state for all to follow. Therefore, depending on the nation state or region, the national legal framework may be more or less adequate to face the challenges that neurotechnologies pose to human rights. However, given the rapid pace of innovation and the global nature of neurotechnology development and use, there is a need for more coordination and cooperation at the international level to ensure that neurotechnologies are governed by common ethical principles and human rights standards. Okay, that concludes question 9. Any questions? Now's the time. Okay. Question number 10. Does national legislation on privacy and data, or actually data protection, cover mental privacy and or personal brain data? Please explain. The United States lacks a single comprehensive federal law that regulates the collection and use of personal information. Instead, the government has approached privacy and security by regulating only certain sectors and types of sensitive information. An example, health and financial. Creating overlapping and contradictory protections. However, there are some laws that protect personal information, such as the Privacy Act of 1974, which applies to federal agencies and their contractors. There are no specific laws that cover mental privacy or personal brain data. The skull is the limit. No one should ever be allowed to enter. Question 11. From a human rights protection perspective, what are the main domestic regulatory gaps that can be identified? What legal or other measures are necessary to avoid human rights violations arising from the use of neurotechnologies, in your opinion? There are significant gaps and challenges in the current domestic and international regulation of neurotechnologies. Some to include the lack of clear definitions and standards for what constitutes neurotechnologies, brain data, or mental processes, and how they should be measured, stored, shared, or used. The lack of adequate oversight and accountability mechanisms for the development, testing, deployment, and evaluation of neurotechnologies, especially in non-clinical settings, such as consumer, military, or judicial domains. The lack of harmonization and coordination among different jurisdictions and stakeholders on the ethical principles, legal frameworks, and best practices for neurotechnology and governance. The lack of awareness in the medical community, local police, federal agencies, and engagement on the ethical and social implications of neurotechnologies and the potential risks and benefits for human rights. The importance to consider some possible legal or other measures that could help to avoid human rights violations arising from the use of neurotechnologies. Some of these include developing a comprehensive and coherent international agreement on neural rights that could provide a common normative basis for regulating neurotechnologies in a way that respects human dignity and diversity. Establishing national laws and policies that incorporate neural rights into existing human rights frameworks, and that ensure effective implementation and enforcement mechanisms for neurotechnology governance. Creating multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder platforms that facilitate dialogue, collaboration, and innovation among scientists, engineers, ethicists, lawyers, policymakers, civil society organizations, and users of neurotechnologies. Promoting education and awareness campaigns that inform and empower the public about the opportunities and challenges of neurotechnologies, and that foster a culture of responsibility and respect for human rights. And again, I have some links here. I'm going to take a little bit of a break and see if I can get these links into the chat. Okay, we have a question. Go ahead, wireless caller.
Yeah, it's me again. Regarding that question, I think we could probably add what the government of Chile has done with its constitution with regard to legal measures necessary to avoid human rights violations. They banned the sale of brain data, which is an incentive that criminals have to violate human beings.
Liliana, how are
Yeah?
they enforcing this, and how are they detecting it? What are they doing exactly? They made a law, okay, just like Poland did.
Yeah, well, they included it in as an amendment of their constitution, which they did towards the end of last year. They added neuro rights to their constitution. They amended it, and one of the important things they did is to prohibit the sale of brain data. I mean, how other countries are going to achieve it, it's something that has to be developed with international law and also national legal systems. But at least we should add it there that we suggest that the sale of brain data be banned, commerce of intellectual property and brain contents of human beings. It encourages crime. It encourages human rights violations. So that should be added there, as a suggestion, like, following initiatives from other countries like the government of Chile. And then I wanted to ask you in question 10, because I was not able to reach the ask a question. Is the U.S. Constitution a law that covers privacy, data protection, mental privacy, perhaps not personal brain data, because that's something that neurotechnology would make us aware of, and on the sale of brain data, which is a crime. But does the any amendment in the U.S. Constitution protect the privacy of human beings and the mental privacy, maybe not the mental privacy, but the privacy of human beings, and and their intellectual property. Is that something that we can add the Constitution there to question 10?
Yes. I think that the 5 human rights that were created should be inserted. Like the Neuro Rights Foundation. They came up with 5 brand new human rights. I don't like the wording, but they look like they will work. But they haven't been included anywhere.
Yeah.
They haven't been included.
Yes. Yes, I think that you mentioned that on this question, question 10, but the Constitution as a law, is that a piece of national legislation that protects the privacy and intellectual property of human beings?
No, it's not.
In the Constitution of the United States?
No, the Constitution was written when the U.S. first got started. Right back in the beginning.
So there's no thought about the privacy of people regarding their freedom, privacy, freedom, and independence.
Yes, but not neuro privacy. There's nothing, I mean, when this was written, there was no knowledge of any way to manipulate or read someone's mind.
Yeah. So, therefore, anything in the Constitution about the privacy of Americans would not cover the mental privacy of Americans.
I don't believe the legal language is there.
Okay.
All an attorney has to do is say, when was the Constitution written? That's all they have to say.
Okay. All right. So then my suggestion for 11 then that we add that a legal measure could be like the initiative of other countries to ban the sale of brain data that encourages crime, organized crime, and human rights violations.
That sounds very good to me.
Okay.
I would love to help draft something like that.
Well, you had a very good answer. It's just one extra sentence to add to what you have. Just one extra sentence to what you wrote, to be added.
Email me your edits, because as it is now, I'm just trying to get links out and find the links that I need to get out. And
okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I've got another link here now. This is the nationalacademics.org Committee on Human Rights. I just put in the chat. Okay, thank you, Liliana. I appreciate it. I'll leave your mic open there.
Welcome.
Okay, my next question, or their next question. Is your national institutional framework for human rights well equipped to address the new challenges posed by neurotechnologies? The United States is neither close to being well equipped to address the older human rights issues, but in denial about what is actually happening in the nation state relative to neurotechnologies. In other words, I feel that they're in the dark. That's my opinion. Question 13. What national entity would be best placed to exercise scrutiny and oversight to prevent potential abuses or misuses derived from the use of neurotechnologies? Is there any procedure in place to that effect? Now, I've named the National Academies, Science, Engineering, and Medicine.
Yeah.
The Keck Center of the National Academies at 500 Fifth Street in Northwest Washington, D.C. The Keck Center provides meeting space and houses the National Academies Press Bookstore. And I have a link for that. The CHR appeals for justice in support of colleagues worldwide who are suffering serious human rights abuses as a result of their professional work or their exercise of other internationally protected rights. That is the conclusion of question 13. What are the main international regulatory and governance gaps that you have identified as regards to neurotechnology and human rights? Now, I refer this back to question 11. Excuse me. And question 11 is very long. This will be available to anyone who wants to see it. It's going on our website immediately, as quick as I can get it up there. And you'll be able to look at it and use portions if you want. Use it as a template. Whatever you'd like to do. Okay, question number 15. What actions would you advocate to address these gaps and potential human rights impact at the international level? Please elaborate on specific normative or institutional measures you would propose and assess the feasibility of their implementation. The importance of considering some possible legal or other measures that could help to avoid human rights violations arising from the use of neurotechnologies. Some of these include human dignity and diversity. Developing a comprehensive and coherent international agreement on neural rights that could provide a common normative basis for regulating neurotechnologies in a way that respects human dignity and diversity. Establishing national laws and policies that incorporate neural rights into existing human rights frameworks and that ensure effective implementation and enforcement mechanisms for the neurotechnology governance. Creating multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder platforms that facilitate dialogue, collaboration, and innovation among scientists, engineers, ethicists, lawyers, policymakers, civil society organizations, and users of neurotechnologies. Okay, that is question 15. Question 16. Let me see if we have anybody that would like to ask a question here. Nope. What international organization, bodies, or agencies would be, in your opinion, best placed to oversee and prevent potential abuses or misuses resulting from the use of neurotechnologies? The first one is UNESCO, and is the United Nations agency that promotes international cooperation in education, science, culture, and communication. It has a mandate, It has a mandate to foster ethical reflection and dialogue on emerging scientific and technological issues that have an impact on human rights and dignity. UNESCO has established several normative instruments and advisory bodies to guide platform for developing ethical principles and guidelines for neurotechnology research and innovation. And I'm going to, before we go any further, I'm going to grab this link and put it in there because okay, that link's available. The second, IEEE, is the world's largest technical professional organization dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. It has a strong commitment to ethical standards and social responsibility in engineering practice. IEEE has launched several initiatives to address the ethical implications of emerging technologies, such as neurotechnology, artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and mixed reality. IEEE could contribute to developing technical standards and best practices for neurotechnology design and development. I've got another link for them, and I'll put that in there.
Are you continuing with that question?
Yes, I was just putting a link in the chat.
Okay.
Now, this last one I was hemming and hawing on, actually, and that is WHO. And I really don't like their performance, but they have in the past done a lot. What they will do now is beyond me. But who is directing and coordinating authority on international health within the United Nations system? It provides leadership on global health matters, shapes the health research agenda, sets norms and standards, articulates evidence-based policy options, provides technical support to countries, and monitors and addresses health trends. WHO has a role in ensuring that neurotechnologies are safe, effective, equitable, and accessible for health promotion and disease prevention. Who could provide guidance on the clinical evaluation and regulation of neurotechnologies for health purposes? You guys can just Google who. I've got the link here, but oh, what the heck? I'll put it in.
Can I make a comment, Frank?
Sure, go right ahead.
On that question 16, although UNESCO is an important organization that has been able to do many things, the top international organization that should be there is the United Nations itself, the United Nations organization, because it can introduce resolutions through its General Assembly, like last year, introducing the resolution that refers to the abuses of neurotechnology, trying to counteract that.
Liliana, that's mentioned later on. This is for companies or organizations, and it excludes the UN.
It doesn't say that on question 16. It says what international organization, bodies, or agencies would be, in your opinion, best placed to oversee and prevent potential abuses or misuses resulting from the use of neurotechnologies. I would say the United Nations organization, with its bodies like the General Assembly, like the third committee that deals with human rights, and then the United Nations instruments like the Convention Against Torture, that is linked to abuses of human rights, and would be linked to abuses of neurotechnology.
This did not come from the Special Rapporteur on torture. The Neurotechnology Foundation, Neuro Rights Foundation, mentions it. It has a list of international organizations that would be helpful if they are amended to prevent abuses of neurotechnology. And among other things, they mention as number one, the top one, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, that is a legal instrument of international law that belongs to the United Nations framework, and it could regulate internationally and promote then, as a result, the creation of national legislation in the different countries on civil rights, including the neurotechnology rights and neuro rights. And it's the Neuro Rights Foundation that put it on top of the list. But throughout that report, they talk about the power, of force of the United Nations organization itself. Like the use of General Assembly resolutions, the use of decisions from the Human Rights Council brought to the third committee of the General Assembly of the United Nations, and then, of course, the work of the Secretary General in that regard of the United Nations. So although other bodies are independent, like UNESCO, like the World Health Organization, and everything that you put there is excellent,
but we have to put the United Nations organization in front of all that because it's more powerful. It has more links to the international law with organizations, treaties and conventions, the General Assembly, and all that. So it would be much stronger if the United Nations gets fully involved in this work to oversee and prevent abuses from neurotechnologies, similar to the General Assembly resolution that the UN passed on October the 6th last year, condemning the abuses of neurotechnologies, condemning the hooking of human beings to devices like the brain-computer interface, and that was main work of the General Assembly of the United Nations. That would trigger now that is going to happen in a meeting in August of the Human Rights Council and the Human Rights Committee. They are discussing the addition of the neuro rights to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
Okay, Liliana.
And that's a major... Yeah.
We have a question behind you, hon.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to suggest, that the UN organization be the main...
Send your ideas to me by email, and we'll have a look at them.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
All right. Bye now.
You're welcome.
Okay, Restricted, you're unmuted.
Hi, Frank. This is Lonnie.
Hi.
I was just listening, and it came in late, and I'm not online. But I would suggest that we not include the United Nations. Their stand on equal rights has been so one-sided for years and years and years. As far as the WHO, they're in the tank with China.
I know.
And our problem could be very well soon, as I understand it, that you get another pandemic, which can be declared that, and they would be in charge of everybody globally. Tell people in Massachusetts and Texas and somewhere else whether you can, how to react to it. Mask, no mask, 5 feet away from everybody, that sort of thing can happen with the WHO if we keep that kind of,
unfortunately,
that kind of role. So anyway, that was all.
Unfortunately or fortunately, we haven't signed the right papers with those people. So I wouldn't worry about blue helmets for a while.
Okay, I'm coming in late, and I'm really just listening to you. I do know there was an organization, I don't know whether they're still active or what, called the Union of Concerned Scientists. Way back when I was working against the nuclear arms race, this was way back. But they were very helpful and very vocal and very astute in explaining the problems they were concerning. And, that may be a concern. That may be somebody to at least look into. And that's all I had.
I just wanted to add something.
Okay.
Chris just put a message in the chat about Bill Gates. Well, he's best buddies with Xi Jinping from China, and he just went over there and donated $50 million to the CCP.
Oh, wow.
So Bill Gates is not on my most liked lists, I'll tell you.
No kidding. Wow, thank you for saying that.
But I had to look at who, in terms of their qualifications, what they can do, okay? This is a very long questionnaire, and a lot comes out afterwards in a lot of the other questions.
Okay, thank you. I hope I'll be able to read it in another in another way because, like I said, I'm not online.
I
Thank
see.
you, Frank.
Oh,
Thank you,
thank you.
Mark.
Thank you so much, Lonnie.
And God bless.
God bless. Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
Hi, hello?
Hi. Can you speak up?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rob. I'm calling from Suffolk County, Long Island. And I'd like to know when it comes to actual implementation of like what stage are we right now in the neural rights commission or the neural rights um, movement, I guess you could say, right?
Yes.
So what I was wondering is there a timeline or a timetable for the neural rights movement right now as to like implementation or development stage? Like at what stage are we in that process of
As
neural rights?
as Liliana just mentioned, we already have one country that has it in its constitution, and that's Chile. And Poland, not recently, but probably 4 or 5 years ago, had something similar. I know that they're against it, and it did go through their government. But as for knowing exactly when they are going to be able to be approved for all these things, I need my crystal ball.
Yeah. Well, Liliana's on the phone call.
Yeah, she's on here. Yep.
Oh, hi, Liliana. This is Rob. I think we did the 2020 July 31st TI Day. I don't know if you remember. Um, and could I know if you guys are doing that again?
I'm sure that we will be doing something. When I say we, I mean the community. Okay, Rob, we have a question behind you, and I'd like to get reading because we have 38 questions, and we're on 17.
All right, thanks so much. I hope everybody's well. Thanks again for doing this, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, caller, you're unmuted.
Okay. The country of Spain also has introduced legislation on neural rights last year. And in the United States, there's a medical society, the Colorado Medical Society, that adopted 5 neural rights for the state of Colorado. And then we have the Organization of American States that rules for the American continent, including the United States that is a founding member, and they adopted 10 neural rights for the Americas.
Okay, I haven't seen them. We have to have the United States government adopt these civil rights, human rights.
In part, they are a founding member of the Organization of American States, and they did not oppose it or abstain from that vote. So the U.S. can be considered including in the approval of 10 neural rights for the Americas, including the United States. So, but it's small,
Liliana,
really,
it has
and it needs bigger laws and for the United States.
It has to go through the House of Representatives and the Senate and be signed by the President of the United States.
Yes. Yes.
It has not been. So unfortunately, we are awaiting the clock right now because this is coming up very, very fast. Instead of 2030, they're expecting artificial intelligence to start not peaking, but start taking over a little bit in 2 years. So that's why we need to have some framework, groundwork in place. Attorneys have to be updated. They have to learn. They have to learn all about this stuff.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to, we have another caller, and then I'm going to start reading again. Do you have any more questions, Juliana? Put all these recommendations in an email to me, if you would.
Yes. Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
What's going on? We have all the answers boxed and addressed and drop down formulas in the website.
Excuse me?
Pardon me?
Excuse me? Go ahead, sir. You're unmuted.
Oh, I thought I was on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, we're going on to Section 2, private actors and other stakeholders with experience or expertise in the subject matter, such as medical and technical communities and academic institutions. What specific characteristics would you emphasize as unique and distinctive of neurotechnologies? And I just put neurotechnologies are among the fastest moving technologies in the world today, both in the military and private sectors. Neurotechnologies, or specifically BCI, is the only field that could encompass all fields. This technology could be man's best friend or an enemy, forever changing and learning. And I have another link here for you. Let's see if I can get that in there. If you have any questions, just hop in there. Be more than happy to answer them for you. Okay, I've just put a link in there, Techopedia, on neurotechnology. Okay, question 18. Have you introduced or are you considering introducing any adjustment to your activities or business model, such as incentives, indicators, or performance metrics of governance in response to these specific characteristics? Our organization, as well as many others in the targeted community or Havana syndrome community, are constantly watching, working, and waiting. We want to perceive what new modifications or innovations will affect our cause further and or help us to be free from this scourge on mankind. Watchdog groups have been formed for this purpose. Our media organizations are on the air every day and night, spreading the word of our plight. Has your company, organization, undertaken any specific action or measure to mitigate impacts arising from the use of neurotechnologies? Are any of these actions or measures specifically addressed to mitigate human rights risks? And I just put C, question 18. Does your company or organization implement the principles for responsible innovation in neurotechnology? Please elaborate. Not available. Not applicable. Has your company or organization developed or plans developing or adopting an ethical code of conduct or human rights strategy for the development, testing, or commercialization of neurotechnologies? Please outline such initiatives and provide a copy of relevant documents if possible. Not applicable. What national regulation or framework do you consider is needed to avoid a potentially negative human rights impact of neurotechnology? There is no single or universal answer to what kind of regulation or framework is needed to avoid a potentially negative human rights impact of neurotechnology. Different types of neurotechnology may require different levels of oversight and intervention, depending on their intended use, invasiveness, reliability, and potential harm. The regulation of neurotechnology should be based on human rights perspective, ensuring that it respects the dignity, autonomy, consent, and well-being of individuals and groups. The regulation of neurotechnology should be adaptive, flexible, and responsive to the evolving scientific and social context, as well as the emerging risks and opportunities of neurotechnology. The regulation of neurotechnology should be informed by evidence-based research, stakeholder engagement, public consultation, and ethical deliberation involving a diversity of perspectives and interests. The regulation of neurotechnology should be transparent, accountable, and enforceable, with clear roles and responsibilities for different actors, such as developers, providers, users, regulators, and oversight bodies. The regulation of neurotechnology should be harmonized and coordinated at the national and international levels, fostering collaboration and exchange of best practices among different regulators, jurisdictions, and sectors. The regulation of neurotechnology should be supportive of innovation and development while ensuring safety, efficiency, quality, and accessibility of neurotechnological services. The principles and guidelines can provide a basis for developing more specific and concrete regulatory measures for different types of neurotechnology. Okay, let me see if we have any questions here. Okay. Which regulatory framework, such as application of specific sectorial, national, auto-regulation, or a combination of them, do you believe is best suited to the specific characteristics of neurotechnologies. And I have C question 22. And if somebody really wants me to read that, I will. All right, section 3, international and regional organizations, United Nations agencies, funds and programs, national human rights institutions, and civil society. Specific questions. See, this is where the United Nations agencies come in. Please outline the relevant work that your organization, agency, or department has done relative to neurotechnology and human rights. Please share the main outcomes and recommendations, if applicable. It is not applicable. Question 25. Please describe any measures undertaken aimed at coordinating, collaborating, or seeking synergies with the work of other organizations in relation to neurotechnology. Not applicable. What are the main international regulatory and governance gaps that you have identified as regards neurotechnology and human rights? See question 11. And I will read question 11 if anybody would like to hear it. Section 4, Special Procedures of the Human Rights Council. Specific questions. All right, this one, has your mandate considered the issue of neurotechnology and human rights? Okay, mandate, we don't have any, so that's not applicable. What impact of neurotechnology do you foresee in relation to human rights within your mandate? Once again, we don't have a mandate. Not applicable. Question 29. What actions could be undertaken by the Coordination Committee of Special Procedures to address any negative human rights impact arising from neurotechnology? Okay, I don't have a coordination committee, and I don't think any of you do, so that's not applicable. What are the gaps, if any, in the existing international human rights protection framework to address the impact of neurotechnology? How could they be best addressed? Question 11 already answered that, and it's almost verbatim. I've noticed the UN does that in these questionnaires. Many times they'll almost repeat a question exactly to see if you've changed your mind. How could the current international human rights framework be best used or developed to address the impact, opportunities, and challenges of neurotechnology with regard to the promotion of protection of all human rights? Answered already. Section 5, United Nations treaty bodies. Specific questions. Okay, has your treaty body considered directly or indirectly the issue of neurotechnology and human rights while considering individual complaints, examining periodic reports, or elaborating general comments? If so, please indicate the main outcomes and recommendations. Include relevant references and links. Committees of independent experts that monitor implementation of the core international human rights treaties equals state. Okay? In other words, that's the U.S. What impact of neurotechnology on human rights do you foresee from the perspective of your mandate? Okay, once again, we don't have a mandate. Not applicable. What are the gaps, if any? Okay, see question 11. This is another repeat question. How could the current international human rights framework be best used or developed to address the impact, opportunities, and challenges of the neurotechnology with regard to the promotion and protection of all human rights? See question 22. If you'd like me to read it, once again, I will read question 22 and its answer. Section 6, Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, specific questions. What work is OHCHR currently carrying out in the field of neurotechnology and human rights? Please provide any relevant information such as links to reports, background material, sections or units involved, etc. The Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, is involved in the field of neurotechnology and human rights through its support to the Human Rights Council and its advisory committee. The Human Rights Council adopted Resolution 45/23 on 7 October 2020, requesting the advisory committee to prepare a study on the impact, opportunities, and challenges of neurotechnology with regard to the promotion and protection of all human rights. The advisory committee has issued a questionnaire to collect inputs from various stakeholders on this topic. The study is expected to be presented to the Council at its 57th session in 2023. The OHCHR also provides substantive and technical assistance to the Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, who has expressed concern about the potential impact of digital technology, neuroscience, and cognitive psychology on the right to freedom of thought. Additionally, the OHCHR monitors and reports on relevant developments in this field through its publications, such as the report on new and emerging digital technologies and human rights and the report on human rights in the era of artificial intelligence. Okay, I'm going to check and see if we have anybody that would like to Okay, last two questions. Again, what are the gaps, if any, in the existing international human rights protection framework to address the impact of neurotechnology? How could they be best addressed? See question 11. And again, if anybody wants me to read question 11 and its answer, I will. Last question. How could the current international human rights framework be best used or developed to address the impact, opportunities, and challenges of neurotechnology with regard to the promotion and protection of all human rights? Answered in question 9. Okay, that concludes the reading of the questions and my answers. If anyone would like to come up and grab the mic now and give us your answers, we sure would love to hear it. Okay, I'm going to end the Q&A. Oh, hold on. Go ahead. You're unmuted.
I wanted to thank you for your answer to question 36. I thought that was excellent. Everything you put there on the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, question 36, very complete.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then there's a question that is repeated, of course, gaps in international human rights protection framework, question 37, and then how could the international human rights framework be best used or developed, number 38, and then question 30, what are the gaps, if any, in the existing international human rights protection framework? But although they're repeated, one of the main items of international human rights protection framework is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it was written in 1948. So, it didn't include new technologies, but that was one of the suggestions of Professor Yuste of the Human Rights Foundation to include that as a new right within the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because it's an piece of international law that all the countries follow, and it's easy to understand. All of the items included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and he was suggesting that it should be a new right, the neuro rights should be included there, and that besides other international human rights frameworks like that he talked about, like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and many other conventions, the Convention against the discrimination on women, the Convention against human rights, the Convention on against racial discrimination. So the professor has produced a report that includes several of these international conventions, and he says that neuro rights should be included now as a part of all of them, of all existing international human rights. So I could send you in the email that those suggestions from the professor, who is the head of the Neuro Rights Foundation, and and is the top person with knowledge on neurotechnology in this country. That's why he has been working closely with the Human Rights Council, with the United Nations, with UNESCO, with the Organization of American States, and governments of the world to include the neuro rights in their framework. So I'll send you that, but there's several suggestions that he had to include issues of neurotechnology on international treaties and that deal with human rights protection.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to end the Q&A, and I'm going to take a break and drink a glass of water, and I'll be back.
Q&A session is over.